Here is what you need to know if you are into photography business and if you're not sure as to how the photography pricing works. So I have made a list of all the points that I have faced till date, and you can add on to this list. So watch this video till the end so that you will know what exactly to include when it comes to photography pricing. I'm Ravindra Joyasai here, and I have been doing this photography business for quite some time now, which is a part-time job in addition to my IT job. If you are into wedding photography, there are many things to be added when it comes to pricing. How much do you charge? What is to be charged? And what are the things that you need to include when you are discussing on the pricing? You don't have to inform everything to the client because client may not agree for this, but these are some of the things that you need to include when you quote a price to your client. Well, the gear that you use when it comes to wedding photography business is not a one-time investment as most of you guys think. There are so many things that you keep on adding in addition to one single full frame or a crop sensor. I would recommend using a full frame camera. But then these full frame cameras are not cheaper, and the lens that is being used along with this is super expensive. For example, the 7200mm is super expensive. It is costlier than the camera body. And also there are this 85mm and all this prime lens that you use. These are all expensive lenses. The only cheapest I can say is the 50mm or the 35mm lens. Again, that's an expensive if you're buying a full frame lens with the fixed aperture, like the f1.4 or f1.8 kind of lens. So include the camera gear expense because it's easier for your client to say that it's a one-time investment and it's just a click of a button. But in reality, you will be paying EMIs for your gear and you need to know what price is to be included. So I would highly suggest to include at least 5 to 10% of your charges, or say if you're getting your camera for rent, include that in the expense that you're going to charge. I usually have one camera which is the primary camera, but I get the additional secondary camera as a backup camera for rent and I include that charge. In addition to the camera and the lens, there are a few other things that you need to include, like the external lighting kit. So these are all expensive ones. It is not that easy. It is not just like paying for a bulb, but then the entire lighting setup will cost a lot. Even though the lighting setup is not as costly as the camera body or the lens, there is still some cost involved. The next point is the photography business marketing, or the marketing for the wedding photographers. So these are some of the things that are never added by most of the photographers, but then you end up in spending a lot of time in promoting. If you're more of a one-man show or if you're into small business, you need to promote your work. So you end up in spending a lot of time on social media ads. It can be Google ads, or if it's being published on a portal, then in order for your ad or your photography business to pop up on top, you'll end up in paying more for them or as an advertisement fee. There are so many other brands of this kind like Juststyle or any other wedding portals that are available out there. For your business to appear on top, you will have to pay them a premium every month. So that cost is to be included when you're charging your client, at least not the full charge, but a portion of it, so that you get some return on investment. If you want to expand your photography business, then you'll definitely have to do some photography business marketing. So include the cost when you quote. The next point is the photo editing. When it comes to photo editing, you can either do it on your own, but then again you need to purchase something called Adobe Creative Cloud. So Adobe Creative Cloud is something where you need to pay monthly premium for the photography plan, which basically includes the Photoshop and Lightroom. So these things do not come free. There might be people who are using some outdated version or older version of Photoshop, which might be legally or illegal. But these days, if you're running a business, you cannot be using those illegal softwares. So you need to have the original authentic licensed copy. It can be the Adobe Creative Cloud or any other software, but there is a monthly premium or a one-time purchase that you need to do. So this cost is to be included as well. And if you're outsourcing it, you don't have to worry about the licensing part. So if you're outsourcing the work, then you'll have to pay for the editor. So that's another thing that you need to consider. So the next point is the wedding album design. Well, you can either use the software to do this, or there is automatic album designing using the software where you can just upload all the photos, it will design and you just click on it and then export it. You just get it reviewed and then get it approved. There are different ways of doing it, or you can outsource this work to a designer. So again, there is a designer cost involved. I would highly suggest using this automated software. But the problem with these designing tools is that most of them are customized, or most of the templates that you have is for the Western wedding events and not more of Indian wedding events. So Indian weddings are usually much more colorful and it's not usually monotone kind of images. So this is where you might want to outsource the album designing work to someone else, and that will again involve a bit of cost, and that cost can be per page or per album, so depending on who the album designer is. The next is the wedding albums. Album selection and creation is a huge task. Once you're done with the editing, it doesn't mean that you can just upload and send it across to your client. Well, that is one way to do it, but it's always nice to present your work in a nice way to your client, because most of them print their albums, especially if it's a wedding album. I would highly suggest you guys to hand over the album first and then the soft copies. You might share a few photos for their social media to share it across, but always hand over the album first. And there are different varieties of album, like the gala album, the coffee table book, the signature album, the hardcover or the leather cover. There are so many varieties, and it takes almost a month for me to decide and then get it reviewed with the client, and they don't reply to you as and when you want, so they will take their own sweet time, and you cannot even force them, or you cannot be a boss over there. In order for you to get a good feedback, you'll have to listen to whatever they say. But at the same time, make sure that you do not give them a number of choice. Just check with them the budget and then give them the right album design. So this wedding album is something that I used to outsource, and this company where I used to get this printed had some 10 to 20 different varieties in it. They have a format that is to be followed. It is not just the album cover, but also the kind of paper quality that is being used when it comes to printing, the matte finish or different kind of finish that they have got, and also the print quality. Everything matters. So these are some of the things that will take some time. So next is the contract or the agreement that you sign with the client before you go for a wedding photo shoot. It is ignored most of the time, but it is super important, because you will find this agreement very useful if there is an issue. And don't wait for that issue to pop up, but have an agreement. Especially I've seen most of the Indian photographers, they do not follow this. They just go collect the payment at the end and then get into arguments. They're least bothered about getting the good feedback or having an agreement of any kind. So just like how you have small business contract that is signed, it's always good to have wedding videography contract or wedding photography contract. There are a number of wedding photography contract templates available online, and you can refer to that and come up with your own template and include all those things that you want to include, especially the charges for overnight or all those kind of things. So the next point would be the next point is to include late night photo shoot charges. So there are these late night photo shoots or where the wedding happens at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. in the morning, and this is not informed in advance. So mention these in the contract, and you need to have additional charges for these things. Make sure to include this. And also in addition, you have to include the travel charges to the location or wherever the photo shoot location is, because you need to pay for the fuel, and that is to be included in that. And in India, it's common to have the wedding for almost 2 to 3 days time, and you will be spending time over there for at least 2 to 3 days. And make sure that you get a proper room to stay there. I would highly suggest you guys to charge some additional for the room instead of they providing you a room, because I've seen usually the kind of room that they provide isn't good enough, and you don't get a proper room to keep your camera and all the gear safe. Always have a separate room or a dedicated room. I would highly suggest you guys to book a room on your own somewhere nearby instead of using their room, because you will be called at all the time for the photo shoot. You might lose a few customers, that's perfectly fine. People may not be ready to pay higher charges for the night wedding photo shoot, but if you agree for everything, then you are undervaluing yourself. So do not blindly agree for everything. Make these points very clear when it comes to contract. So if you are going alone, then that's perfectly fine, but usually when it comes to wedding photography, handling everything on your own alone, and to keep your camera gear safe, I would highly suggest to take someone along. If there is a photography assistant, then you will have to pay them as well. So include that cost in the final cost. So he can be a backup photographer, or he can be shooting from a different angle, or he can be taking care of all the wires and of the lightings and all those things. And I have seen this particular cost on Skill Update. Skill Update is something that it's up to you to charge or not, but I would say at least some portion, just like how in an IT company when we work, there is some amount kept for the employees' skill upgrade or if if an employee wants to take certification or exam, the client will be charged for that certification. So the same way, you upgrade your skills. When I say skills, it can be you attending a photography session of some other senior photographer. I do not attend those photography classes, but I attend seminars or where there are these popular photographers who speak about their experience. So I go and attend these kind of sessions, but I do not include that charge. But there are these photography tutorials which I spend money on. Though some of them are expensive, some of them are tool specific. Say if it's some new update that has happened in Photoshop or Lightroom, then I'll definitely download the course and learn it, because having the knowledge of these new features and understanding that, and if I have to use that on my day-to-day work activities, it will definitely save time, and there are so many new features being added. So it's always good to learn new things and implement that, because I've seen so many photographers who edit photos as well in addition to capturing photos, but then they use the very old version of Photoshop. I guess that version of the Photoshop is almost 18 to 20 years old. Something, I guess I remember someone using Photoshop CS 2003 version, because they don't know how to use the latest version of the software. And you know how the Adobe Creative Cloud works. There is a new version being released every once in 2 to 3 months time, and there is a new version being released every year, and there are small updates that are happening in the Creative Cloud version. And especially if you're into this fashion photography or wedding photography, then there are so many things that you need to learn when it comes to lighting and many things. It need not be only on photography, but it can be a course on marketing and so many things that you can learn on. So you can include a small portion of that charge to your client, because at the end of the day, it's a cost for you. And if you're running a business, that's a cost for you and your team. You might want to click on that I button where I've shared some of my previous experience when it comes to photography. And also you might want to check this card here where I've uploaded a lot of Lightroom tutorials. And I'll be sharing many more videos of this kind. So go ahead, if you like this video, subscribe to my channel and hit on that bell icon. And if I have left out anything here, then you might want to leave a comment and I will reply to that. See you then. Cheers.